no, we have no money, but then they offered them millions of dollars. Where did all of our money go? If they were broke, you know what I'm trying to say? I mean, how do you offer somebody else money when you're telling us basically you don't have a pot to piss in? I mean, it's so ridiculous. And just to treat, we worked our butts off for that network, and we've done so much promotion on our own for them, and they just treated us like nothing. So a year came and went, and all right, it got us on national television, but we were their highest rated show without promotion. They would have promoted us. We would have drew the numbers that Vince did because we were on Friday nights.
You had Friday nights?
There's nothing on Friday nights.
No, there's not.
You know, and for people who aren't fortunate to have social lives or something like that.
Julia?
No, wait a minute. I did stay home some Friday nights and watch it, but that doesn't mean anything.
Even with the people taping it, I mean, our highest rating ever was a 1.2 or a 1.3, I believe. We could have tripled that number if they only treated us the way we should have been treated, and they didn't do that. So, good riddance to TNN.
And also the cross-promotion that could have happened with CBS and VH1 and MTV. I mean, you hate to sit there and go back, well, what could have been, because you almost get ticked off thinking about it.
You don't know because not everybody put an effort in. We put our effort in, but it's a two-way street. And we can only do so much. Sure. If you're not going to help us, then we're going to fail. And not that we failed. I think they failed us.
That's a very good point. I'm going to ask you, I'm maybe going to put you on the spot here. If you can't answer this, we understand.
I'll tell you go to hell if I can.
Okay, good. Well, I think you would tell me that anyway. But anyway.
Okay.
Do you think the best deal for ECW right now would be for Paul Heyman to sign with the WWF and work on their booking team?
You know what? It's weird because I went through this a million times in my head. If Paul signs, there's no guarantee that the rest of us go with him.
Sure. Right.
So, I mean, God bless him for getting a job, but I don't know where I'm going to be if that happens.
Well, one thing we've heard is that, maybe there would still be spot shows that Paul would still be a part of and work while still working for the WWF and maybe even crossing over some of that talent.
In my opinion, it would seem like we're their farm team. Which is, if they want to give us like a metal show or their jacked show and make it an ECW show, very cool. As long as the boys are getting taken care of and getting paid and working, I wouldn't mind that at all. But if they only want Paul Heyman and rights to like the Pioneer home video stuff, I don't know. I don't know what Vince put on the table for him. I read Jim Ross's comments.
Right.
It doesn't really tell you too much.
Right, exactly.
I'm going to drink his Kool-Aid. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever seen a more blatant "we want you to work for us" in your life?
And that's great, but if Paulie goes and the rest of us can't, then we're gonna have to survive on our own. Honestly, if it's a group effort and we all go, thank God. But I can't tell you, I can't answer that question because I don't know how Vince is working it.
Sure.
We're talking with Francine on the Wrestling Guys. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Francine. Your phone calls, 457-1065. We are the Wrestling Guys with Francine.
On Buckeye Country, 106.5.
Wise is in the studio getting jiggy with it.
That's amazing.
With the Buckeye Country jingle.
There's certain things that I know that I'll go home and have nightmares about, and that's definitely one of them now.
Wow.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Guys, Buckeye Country 106.5. Shawn stood him Willie up. Francine is in the studio. Thank you very much for coming in here.
Thank you. And thank you for my presence. That was very sweet.
Sure, absolutely.
Francine got the consolation gifts from us. And,
that's right. If no one knows,
what's the tagline at the end of game shows? Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
The Powerpuff
That's right.
Girls.
That's the Powerpuff Girls.
They're my favorite.
Francine loves that. And right.
A number of Clear Channel T-shirts.
Right.
And my candy.
And your candy.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Sweet.
So we appreciate you coming here.
Now, do you want to go ahead? Do you want to go ahead and plug your little PO box number that you have to people who are sending?
Sure. It's
now you like South Park. You like Powerpuff Girls and Diamonds.
And
Diamonds. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions or just want to say hi, I have a PO box. It's PO Box 935, and that's in Bear, BEAR, Delaware 19701.
Okay, there you go.
So,
there you go.
Thank you.
Such up. And you talked about before the break that you guys are working independence now for the most part, and you're coming into Dayton. Dayton's always was a hotbed for ECW. So talk about coming back to a town that loves you guys.
Yeah, we haven't been here in a while, so we're picking up indies here and there, and we're just really excited to work tomorrow and on Friday. So we're looking forward to it. And Tommy will be here tomorrow, guaranteed.
Tommy is taking on Big Jim Hutchinson. Maybe Raj wants to come in here for this.
Yeah, because I don't know much about Big Jim, but I hear he's pretty big.
He never gave me a rematch.
he's pretty big, though, right?
He's not big.
He's not big?
He's tall, but I beat him.
One thing...
You beat him? All right.
One thing which is kind of interesting is that Big Jim got a tryout with ECW, and Tommy was one of the guys that evaluated him, right?
Tommy invited him back. We did a night in Toledo, And Tommy came up to him and asked him would he be in Cincinnati and invited him back to Cincinnati.
Right.
So I think that's a positive thing for him.
He's a talented worker, so give him a shot.
And also, Rhino's going to be on the show against the UCW champion Ricker.
No, he's going to be taking on Bilvis Wesley.
You changed that now.
Well, it's Bilvis.
Hey,
Card
it's
subject
Bilvis.
to change.
Bilvis
Let me
is
tell
in the
you,
house.
the Wrecker wanted
Bella,
Rhino,
the
and Rhino
merchandise girl.
said that the Wrecker was too much, and I don't want to get into that because Rhino might try to find me in the back and spear me through the wall or something.
Yeah.
And, I'm tougher than that, but you know.
Raj,
You got to know how to work
just so you
Rhino.
know, this show is being taped.
Right.
I know.
And it's going to be on every
Rhino
website.
Is probably, Rhino's probably a great guy, and I just love him.
Right. You better say that. He'll gore you right
Tell
through
on
the
me,
wall.
would you? Hey, you know
Yeah.
what? I got attacked by the Dudleys. Sam put me up to a trick when we was in Louisiana, and they left their glasses out. And I picked up Devon's glasses, and I said, testify. So, it was big.
He
big
steals
Sal.
everybody's gimmick, doesn't he?
Yeah. Look,
That's
Big
gimmick
Sal and the
infringement.
guys were sitting at the table, and they
Did
just
you
kind of looked at
trademark
me.
that or something?
I don't know.
Well, the next night, I got clothesline behind the head.
Excuse me, are you the special guest tonight? I don't think so.
No.
All right. Okay,
Wow.
so, anyway.
Oh, jeez.
That's a little
Raj,
woo.
slide over to the
That's a
corner.
little woo.
Eat some more Papa
I gotta get real
John's.
low.
Go get your pizza, sweetheart. All
Go
right.
get your pizza, and everything will be fine. Let's talk a little bit about ECW. The one thing which you said was it made ECW I think so special for everybody to watch was how everybody was so tight in the locker room. And we've been backstage for the WWF and WCW and ECW, and I can confirm. I mean, it was just such a special feeling to see the guys, and particularly, hopefully this isn't the case, but what was the last show you guys ran down in Pine Bluff?
Yeah.
The celebration you guys had in the ring was just a very special thing.
It was, to think that was the last show sickens me, to be honest with you. And we were all like, crying and hugging and this and that. You don't want to think it's over, but you never know. So, I mean, we took it with a grain of salt. Hopefully it's not over with, but if it was, I mean, that's the best locker room I've ever had the privilege of working with. So, right now my faith is in Paul Heyman.
Sure.
and God, and we're just all praying that it works, because we do have a very hard-working locker room, and, we're hungry, and we still want to prove ourselves. We haven't, we get to this level, and then they snatch it, and we can't get to the next one, and we're trying, and we really deserve it. All of us do. So we're just, crossing our fingers and hoping for the best.
You came into the company, what, 95, 96?
No, I came in December 93.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I trained, we didn't have the House of Hardcore. It was in Philadelphia. I was training for them and doing spot shows. I didn't get on TV till 95.
And you brought in with Stevie Richards.
Right.
Over the last 6-7 years, what
Steven Richards.
Steven Richards
Yeah.
now. Well, you brought in with Stevie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was with him when he wore the little hot pants and the cool little half shirt. Very sexy look, by the way. But
So
yeah.
over the last 6-7 years, what's been the one thing which stands out for you as like that was just the best moment ever?
They asked me this on the television show I just did. The greatest moment for me as a performer was when we announced that we were going on pay-per-view, because that meant that we made it.
Sure.
And just I get a kick out of getting booed or whatever role I'm playing, as long as the fans are responding to me. I'm so happy working, and I love what I do. But that moment when Paulie announced that we were having a pay-per-view, we got chills. It was just, it was another one of those times where after, because we were all either the heels were, on the stage, baby faces were in the ring. I was a heel, of course, so I was on the stage, and just going to the back and just hugging everybody and saying, this is it. We're going to finally get our chance.
Right.
And I mean, we've done like 20-something pay-per-views, because I keep all my little tags, and I was looking through them the other day, and I was like, that can't be the last one we did. So.
And you can see that excitement too. I mean, if anyone's seeing it beyond the mat, I mean, that's
yeah, you see me crying on
exactly,
that one.
right,
That was
yeah,
embarrassing. And it was
exactly.
funny because Barry came to a show after that, and he goes, "Did you see the movie?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I put you in it." I said, "Yeah," and it was very flattering. Thank you very much. I'm crying, wiping my nose, you know what I mean? So, but no, it was a privilege to be in the movie. It's just a privilege to work in general, and I'm really lucky, because, I mean, a lot of women or men try to get in the business, and they can't do it. And God forbid if this is the end, I've had a hell of a run. So I've been very blessed. Hopefully it's not over.
We're talking with Francine from Extreme Championship Wrestling. How did you decide to get into this business? What was your, I'm sure that's a question you get asked all the time.
I was doing life insurance, believe it or not.
Really?
And hating what I did, sitting at a desk. I had a cubicle, no window, nothing to look
Were you
out.
like a telemarketer calling people all the time?
No. I did actual life insurance. I put beneficiaries on your plans and whatnot, and then I got promoted to customer service, and I had a fight with the agent, and I hung up, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I went home, and I was watching television, and that was my first glimpse of ECW, and we were on one station, and we got it Tuesdays at 6, because that's when I lived in Philadelphia, and they had a commercial. You want to be a referee, a manager, or a wrestler, call this number. I had no connections. I didn't know a soul in the wrestling business, and I called the number, and I left my name, and I left my number, and somebody had called me back, and I had a meeting with Todd Gordon, who was in it at the time. And then he told me, he's like, well, you're a pretty girl. You won't have to bump at all. And I go, oh, okay, that sounds really good. I didn't even know what a bump was. I'm like, excuse me? And he goes, you won't have to fall much. You're an arm piece. And I go, well, I'll do whatever. I know I can do it. I was getting totally eliminated like the first week I was in there. I'm like, Todd, you're a liar. But I mean, I just I always admired Sherry Martel. And she kind of got me in the business because I wanted to do what she did, but I wanted to add a womanly, feminine. So I put her and Nancy Sullivan together, and that created my character.
Okay.
And that's where I got my character from. So.
And as you said before, I mean, you have done things that, basically no one else had done. Up until that point. Well, yeah, now it's basically...
It's cool to do now, but back then it wasn't so cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, the power bomb through the table, I was crying as he put me on his shoulder. I was so scared. I mean, it's just, you're so high up there, and I looked up and all I seen were lights, and I blacked out, and then as soon as I hit the mat, I was like, it's over with. But I mean, Bam Bam broke my pelvis.
Really?
And he press slammed me. I didn't know what to do. I'm twisting and turning. I landed on my hip. I mean, I blew out. I just recently broke my nose. I broke my ribs. I blew out my knee. But you take a chance when you go into the ring, and I'll do it again. And if it happens again, then I'll recover, and I'll do it again, and I'll do it again, and I'll do it again. A glutton for punishment, right?
Well, do you think that how bad was it when Todd Gordon left and Paul had to take on all the responsibility? Do you think that was anything that maybe Paul should have brought somebody in to help him with that?
You know what? To tell you the truth, I don't know much about what Todd did for our company besides being like financial backer. I honestly don't know what he... And call me naive, but...
You see him on tapes every once in a while.
He was like one of the boys. He was a worker.
Right.
Kind of. Kind of a manager who did bumps and things.
Sure.
So the business aspect back then, I don't know. Like now I travel with Paul, and I've actually learned production. I go up to the studio and I sit and I watch, and I've done on airs with Joey, so I know a little more about the business than I did when I first started. I don't know what Todd did, but I know that Paulie always likes to do everything himself, and he likes to wait till the last minute, and then he's like, we're doing this, and this, and blah, 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 blah. Tommy does a lot.
Right.
A lot. He's Paul's right-hand man, and actually they're kind of equal.
Yeah.
Because, and then if there's something that's left to be done and any of us can do it, we do it. So if somebody, if the flights need to be done and nobody's around to do it, we'll do it. If somebody has to pick up somebody, we'll do it. I mean, we're not above anything in this company.
Sure.
We'll help as much as we can. And we've always been like that.
We only have about another minute to go, but I want to ask you something about Tommy. Last time he did our show, he was talking about how just physically he didn't know how much longer he had in this business. That was a year and a half ago, and the guy has put himself through so much since then. Are you amazed that he's able to even get out of bed in the morning and walk with the beating he's
I
given
kick him
himself?
out of bed in the morning. No, he has taken a lot of abuse, as most of the boys have. But,
right.
I mean, the last injury he got was when he separated his shoulder. And I took him to the hospital that night. And that was just like, his back was just starting to feel better. And then he goes and hurts his shoulder. And I'm like, Jesus, what else can happen now? But, I mean, you rest up. And right now, I mean, we're doing indies, but we're not booked as much as we were before. And ECW does take its toll. We don't slack off because there's only 1,000 people in the audience, Let's take it easy.
Right.
We give you 100%, whether there's 5 people or 5,000. And if he's hurt or not, he'll still do it. And that's just the way he is, and that's the way we all are.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great things. I've always been a big Tommy Dreamer mark, and one of the reasons is that he was a guy that never phones it in. Other guys get a hangnail, they take a week off or whatever, but he, no matter what.
No, you got a concussion, shake it off, work.
Rub some dirt on it.
Rub some dirt on it,
That's
you'll be fine, right?
I've worked on crutches. I mean, it's not fun, but it pays the bills, and you got to keep your face on TV, and we love working. That's what we love to do, so.
Again, tomorrow night, 7:55, Union Hall. Francine, Tommy Dreamer, Rhino, New Jack.
Bilvis.
Are you wrestling too, Raj?
And Bilvis.
You're on the show, Bobo, Sam, the
Don't
Nature
forget
Boy, Raj
Bilvis
Cox.
and Bella, the merchandise girl.
But it's all going to be there. For the phone number, 640-2794 for you to get your tickets. Tickets still available, Raj, correct?
Yes.
All right. And Francine, again, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
No matter what happens, you're going to have a place somewhere in this business. You know that.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
If nothing else, Julia, if she keeps falling out of her chair, we're
maybe
going
I
to have to
could
find...
work for her 900 number or something. I have a sultry voice, sometimes. So.
I think you could do that. But, if Julia gets on the DL, maybe you could come here and, you could work with us.
I'd love to come back. Thank you.
All right. That sounds great. Good luck to you tomorrow night. Say hi to Tommy for us.
I will. Thank
Happy
you.
Valentine's Day to you, by the way.
And to you as well.
Thank you very much. We've got to wrap things up. We only have 5 seconds. Thank you very much. We are the Wrestling Guys on Buckeye Country 106.5.
Go ahead, say it.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Later.
There you go.
Hey, what's going on, Dayton? You have Willie F. Neither one of the guys that are in that in promo are here. Willie F. with you, along with, this is like pairing Eminem with Elton John. This is the kind of show we have going.
I'm Eminem.
No. I'm definitely Eminem on that. Cam the Man Collins has joined us tonight. Thank you, Cam, for coming in and doing the show tonight.
Well, not a problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we have 2 hours of talking about wrestling. It's kind of a free forum tonight because, Shawn always has all these shows like just planned right down to a T. And I'm more of the free spirit. But we do have a guest. At 8 o'clock, we do have Gary Michael Cappetta. And Julia, you want to tell everyone who that is now?
No.
See, exactly. Gary Michael Cappetta. Actually, he was actually on this show before, and one of our favorite guests that we've had on here. And he is very opinionated. He was actually with WWF, WCW, and AWA. In fact, he even says he worked for all 3. He worked for Vince McMahon, for now I'm thinking Vern Gagne. And why am I thinking? And Jim Crockett, all at the same time.
Oh, this is going to be fun tonight.
I should have taken notes. And he's going to be on. He's a very opinionated guy. He has worked backstage and as a ring announcer and has many, many stories. And most of the, from what I gathered from his website at bodyslams.com, he doesn't like a lot of people.
Not at all.
No, for what I'm saying, really, he doesn't.
It's hard to tell who he does like. If you look at the comments he makes about Vern Gagne, that is something I'm going to ask him about, especially in light of the recent, selling off of AWA items. I think it'd be interesting to hear what he thinks about that. But according to his website, anyone from Dusty Rhodes, even his childhood idol Bruno Sammartino, is not spared in his comments, and it's really hard to tell who he does like and who he doesn't.
Very much so. So I can't wait for that. That'll be at the 8 o'clock hour. Now, Shawn is scheduled to call in at some point, sometime around, Julia's saying no, sometime around 7:15, he will be calling in, and we got a little debate going, I think, with Shawn, because both Cam and I both feel that, well, you know what, we'll just save that. We'll save that for 7:15. Let's get into the news, because, that's why people listen to our show anyway.
Of course, they don't listen for any other reason but the news.
None of the opinions or anything, just the news, and Cam's got the news, so...
I would say I'm filling big shoes, but they're not really that big, are they?
No, they're not.
Can they be? Don't! All right, let's start out. Let's get into some ratings news. Ratings delayed, of course, because of the President's Day, I guess. And
President's
Day is very presidential President's Day. Monday Night Raw, of course, winning the ratings for the 10 millionth week in a row, I think. 4.8.
That's an official number, too, isn't it? 10 million?
It's like 5,000 million weeks in a row. They do hours of 4.4 and 5.2. That is down from their first quarter average of 5.1. Nitro doing a stellar 2.0.
All right.
Now, that doesn't mean 2 million people. That means 2 people watched Nitro.
No, it's a little bit more than that.
Actually, it is. And that is down from last week's 2.1 and their first quarter average of 2.3.
Each rating point, I think, doesn't it? It's like 900,000.
900.
Why they couldn't round that?
It's like 988,000 homes.
Yeah, why they couldn't round that off to just a million, so you know. But that's exactly what it is.
Exactly. So let's get into some other news. Of course, ratings are pretty much the same week in and week out at this point. There are some sources reporting that Kid Cash is close to a deal with ECW. Shawn covered this on the hotline today. And the reason I want to talk about this a little bit is because there are going to be stories circulating about a bunch of ECW talent going to WCW. And the one thing that you will hear in each and every one of these stories is that WCW will wait until these wrestlers have an official release from ECW.
Right.
And this was done for two reasons. Sabu and Mike Awesome.
Exactly.
Both were complete debacles, and really WCW got hosed and taken to the cleaners on the Mike Awesome deal, and they don't want that to happen again. So you'll start hearing these rumors about people jumping to the WCW. Actually, Simon Diamond and Dawn Marie were rumored to be heading there. Well,
actually, I read Simon Diamond was going to go there. He was actually going to have a tryout. He did, or he got a written release from Heyman. Something came up, and now I know there's a lot of rumors out there saying that well, he didn't want to do a tryout due to the fact that he felt that was beneath him. Well, those rumors are completely and utterly bogus.
Right.
And actually, something did come up, and he was unable to make it to Nitro.
And there is some concern about the fact that WCW is releasing all their women right now, and they don't think there's going to be room for Dawn Marie, which, in my opinion, is a shame because she's a lot like Francine in that she takes some killer bumps, and she can actually work. So to not utilize that talent, I think, is just wrong. You're basically, it's, let's say it's sex discrimination kind of thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know what? I just think kind of that, the women have run the course right now.
Is it smart, though, for WCW to release these people, these women, on that basis, given what's going on right now with the racial discrimination?
That's a very good point, but at the same time, I think that they need to come into some cost-cutting measures. I heard even Miss Hancock's not going to be back.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I would think that David Flair will have something to say about that though at some point. But maybe they're going to start going, with the maybe they're going to bring back managers again.
Who knows?
Who knows? Which would be great.
I know for a fact that if they do, Brock Guffman's in the running. Willie, I'm sorry, but Brock Guffman's up there. He's a step closer than maybe what you are at this point.
Well, that's fine. I've already retired, so that doesn't matter.
Absolutely. In some other signing news, of course, we all know that Rhino has signed with the WWF. He was backstage at Raw, but was not used. However, at the SmackDown tapings, he was used in a dark match. He defeated Bo Dubb, so he is in action in the WWF. And it was kind of funny because some of the reports are saying, some of the fans are reporting that Rhino looks thinner now than he did in ECW. And why that's so funny is, of course, he was just in town for the show last Thursday, the ECW show. And Tommy Dreamer, Francine, New Jack, and Belvis were all backstage, and they commented, even A.T. Huck, the referee, they all commented that Rhino looked absolutely jacked.
He looked in really good shape. Probably the best shape that I've seen him in from watching. Of course, the TV plays so much into that.
One of the most intimidating figures I've ever met.
Absolutely.
It's like, just stay away from him because he's really a bad guy. but he's really nice. But he's
really
like
nice, really soft-spoken. Yeah, absolutely.
Got some injury reports coming out of Nitro. Shannon Moore suffered a little boo-boo on his ankle. Nothing too serious. Buff Bagwell caught a bump over his left eye. Unfortunately, not too serious. He's going to continue to wrestle. So it was basically not a lot of serious injuries, not like a Sid injury. It wasn't Johnny Ace's fault this time.
Yeah, exactly.
In case you missed Shawn's report today, Sid Vicious did an interview and said that it was Johnny Ace's idea for him to do that off-the-middle turnbuckle kick, in which his leg snapped, and then he commented that he wanted to continue the match, but his leg kind of wouldn't let him.
Well, if Johnny Ace booked that, fine, but at the same time, the guy has been known to have, really weak ankles anyway, and for anyone to come off, the top rope and only land on one foot.
And you're 300-plus pounds.
Exactly. I don't care who told you to do it. I would say that's probably not a good idea.
I wonder if he would have told him to do a moonsault if he would have tried it.
Exactly. That's why I don't understand, because later on in the interview, too, Sid Vicious comes along and says, I've told guys when the finishes, when I don't agree with a finish, or I've told, when I don't agree, but I still go ahead and do it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't even think he said he disagreed with this one, did he?
No, he said he was kind of hesitant, but he went ahead and did it. And my point on that is basically a finish you should do.
Sure.
Because you are a worker, you're booked and promoted for a reason. If it sucks, just tell them it sucks. But when it comes to a move in the ring, That's something you have to have some control over. Stone Cold Steve Austin won't take pile drivers anymore for obvious reasons.
Sure.
And there are guys who won't take certain moves. And Sid Vicious certainly would have been within his rights to say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do that. I've never done it.
I agree, so
Sid had an interesting interview there. And some other rumored signings and people trying to get hired by WCW. Why does everybody want to be hired by WCW right now? It's almost like, well, it's WCW or unemployment, and they're flipping a coin. Okay, I guess I lost. I'll take WCW.
I think a lot of it has to do with, you look at all the talent that has gone into WWF lately, and maybe they think that that's going to be an oversaturated market right now. So why not go into something that's going to start out fresh? Eric Bischoff may have some money to deal out to once everything's delivered.
Really knows how much money this guy's going to have to play with. And
so, and they're looking to get in and maybe get pushed to the top.
Absolutely. Blue Meanie, Jasmine St. Clair, some others who were at Nitro. Obviously, everybody's going to kind of be on quote-unquote auditions.
And there's a lot of people, too, that I don't think the WWF would use. And Blue Meanie and Jasmine, I think, are two of the candidates there.
Well, what'd you think about Jim Ross's comments on the WWF website? Basically said, roster cuts are coming soon.
Absolutely.
Let the speculation begin as to who is actually going to get fired.
Now, I don't think that was right for him to come out that. I know Dave Shearer at OneWrestling.com said this blasted him for that. But everyone needs to realize, too, that stuff has been going. I mean, we don't talk about it a lot because it's normally a lot of developmental guys that are getting cut. But there are these major cuts the WWF does every single week. It seems like they sign up new guys and also release some guys that are under developmental contracts. Most of the guys that they are releasing are guys that are basically getting lazy, not doing what they asked them to do, and basically have an attitude. So it's nothing new, but you have to really feel, like Dave Shearer said, how do some of these guys that are just maybe mid-Carter or under, or not even have a program right now, I mean, are not even involved in a storyline, how are these guys feeling about what Jim Ross said?
Exactly. A name like Taz.
Exactly.
An exceptional talent who is not being used at all. He came out and did some commentary for the SmackDown tapings, I think, but for the most part, he's not being used, especially not to his potential. Yet you hear roster cuts.
Sure.
And now is he going to be out of a job to keep somebody like Crash Holly, who I think is a fine addition to the hardcore division?
Sure.
He adds a comedy effect. And you have guys like that. Al Snow, well, I mean, what's he really doing right now? He has a little bit of a comedy bit, but we also know that Al Snow has recently re-signed for, I don't know for how long, but...
well, at least Taz and Al Snow know that they have that Tough Enough coming up, so you know that I think they're kind of safe with the WWF for a while.
That's true. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those go. Now, speaking of WWF and Vinnie Mac, he made an interesting list. I guess the question to be posed is, what does Vince McMahon and David Arquette have in common? Well, they made a list on Murderize.com, and the list is called Top 10 People America Wants to Kick in the fill in the blank.
And fill in the blank at that point.
Grapefruits kind of thing. Vince McMahon made number 5 on the list.
Right.
And David Arquette was number 9, primarily for his role in Ready to Rumble. That was the one thing they pointed to in Ready to Rumble. They said his only saving grace was the fact that he bagged a catch like Courtney Cox.
Well, sure.
So that's it for that. But interesting list. Now, as we said at 7:15, about that time frame, we've got an interesting topic.
That's right. And actually, Shawn is already on, but what we're going to do when we come back, we're going to take a break first. When we come back, Shawn Stidham is on the line from Chicago, and we'll have him right here.
Is he on the celebrity hotline?
He's on the celebrity hotline.
Oh.
And you're listening to The Wrestling Guys on Buckeye Country 106.5. Here on the Wrestling Guys radio show, I'm Willie F., along with Cam the Man Collins. You can give us a call at 457-106.5. And let's go to the celebrity hotline. Let's not make him wait, because we already have. And, his bill's very high at this point.
Oh, he's got the money.
Shawn, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Good. Shawn Stidham calling in from Chicago. How is Chicago right now?
Just what you would expect. Last night I decided, to try and go out, do a little shopping, something like that. And there's a mall about 8 miles from here, the closest mall.
Okay.
And I get there, and nobody tells me it's an outdoor shopping mall. It's kind of like, if you take your standard mall, rip the roof off of it. You have you have all your typical stores there, and it's just outside in 15-degree weather.
Just a big strip mall is what you're saying.
No, it's really like an actual mall. I mean, obviously it's out the second level. but you have your standard mall-type stores. You have your Sears and your Marshall Fields and your Disney stores and all that. So it's your typical mall, Music Land, all that.
Wow. Okay. So I know
a little nippy, but yeah.
A little nippy.
Yes.
Are you okay?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much.
So actually, now, what exactly are you calling in for anyway? Because we got to figure this out. Because I know what I want to talk to you about.
Well, you can talk to me. I just basically called in to make sure the show's not going to hell in a handbasket.
It's not yet.
Well, yeah,
it's going in. It's actually going to hell in a nice bonnet.
and we won't promise you that it won't go to hell in a handbasket.
Right, as soon as you get off. But
yeah, it's like,
I just want to have something to come back to next week.
No, that's not a problem. We can have that for you.
Thanks.
And actually, you missed it. The studio is really clean right now.
Really?
Yeah. But anyway,
is that a good thing?
I guess it is.
Okay,
but
good.
actually, what we wanted to talk to you about is, I know on the hotline on Tuesday, you had some criticism for WCW for doing a funeral angle.
Yes.
And because you basically felt that it was too soon after, Dale Earnhardt passed away, that to do that. And actually, both Cam and I.
And I think it comes from a lack of understanding of professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
People just don't know.
You know what the difference is? NASCAR's on ESPN. Wrestling isn't anymore.
That's true.
NASCAR's on TBS. NASCAR's on CBS. It's easy to pick on something when you're not getting any money from it.
Corporate sponsors will line up for NASCAR all day.
Yeah, the mirrors between NASCAR and wrestling and the way they're treated by the media somewhat. NASCAR's getting over a lot of it. But it was as big a hilljack, hillbilly, redneck sport.
NASCAR gets bashed on the Northeast part of the country a lot.
Right, yeah, of course.
Just because people don't understand cars up there, but
yeah. Well, we don't understand that New York accent.
Yeah, exactly. we don't understand cab drivers.
Yeah.
So
we don't understand the Kennedys.
No, I'm never going to understand the Kennedys.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure. Cam,
BJ, thank you very much.
Great, thanks again, BJ.
Great, valid points. Let's go to line 5 with Jeffrey. Jeffrey, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, what's going on?
I was wondering if you guys knew when Vampiro was coming back.
I don't know. He went off to play bass for ICP, and then he wasn't going to play bass, and then he was going to come back. And that's the last I've heard. He kind of fell off the face of the earth.
He really did. I don't know if a lot of people were turned off by his attitude, but normally when somebody drops away like that, he was in a prominent angle of Sting.
Absolutely.
He drops away, and it's odd that we don't hear about him.
Right. What was that, Jeffrey?
I had one more question.
Sure.
For you guys. I heard something about Sting signing a contract at WWF.
No, not going to happen.
No. Actually, I heard Sting is very excited about the new ownership.
Absolutely.
And he's very much looking forward to making his return as well.
Yeah. And once again, he was on TV. They showed him very prominently during that opening angle on Nitro. He's not going anywhere.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks, Jeffrey. Tell you what, can we go ahead and take a break? Because and try to come back, and when we come back, we'll have Gary Michael Cappetta. I was doing the break symbol. All right. Anyway, let's go back. We'll get Gary Michael Cappetta on the line, and you'll be back with more of the wrestling guys
here on Buckeye Country 106.5.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Guys. Willie F. with you. Gave me the cue and we weren't ready to go. Yeah, that's nice. Thank you.
There's so many mic buttons, I don't know which one you're at.
I understand. We are here on Buckeye Country 106.5, and Cam the Man Collins left for just a little bit. He'll be right back. But on the phone with us right now is actually one of our favorite guests that we had on, and I wasn't here for the interview, but Gary Michael Cappetta. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing, Al?
Very good. A lot of people have asked us to have you back because let's be quite honest. You're a very opinionated guy. You've been around the business for quite some time, and you have just amazing amount of stories to tell. And the last time we had you on, I know we had the Shane McMahon story, which
do you know why that is?
Why is that?
You just have to ask the right questions.
Well, there you go. And I know Cam has some stuff.
Doing that.
Cam has I know some questions that he's he's been eagerly awaited to ask you ever since he heard we're going to have you on. So, Cam, go ahead.
Hey, Cam, how you doing?
Great. How are you, Gary?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
I was at the website today, checking out, seeing how the book was doing, and I was checking out the movie script stuff. And, of course, I had to check out all the quotes about the various wrestlers and promoters you've worked with throughout your career, which is, by the way, a very impressive list. If any of the callers out there, listeners out there, have not checked it out, bodyslams.com, name the superstar, and Gary Michael Cappetta has an opinion about the person because it's from personal experience. The one that caught my interest was Vern Gagne. Mm-hmm. And you admit you were talking a little bit about how a 53-year-old man refused to put others in the company over himself. And I started thinking, what was the ridiculous price they were asking for the AWA World title? Like $700,000?
Yeah, it was something like that when they were selling it.
Now, a guy like Vern Gagne, do you think he really expects to get, $750,000 for a championship belt?
Absolutely. And several times. Vern is a very interesting guy. First off, I should say that he was my step to national exposure. The first time that I was ever on national television was with Vern's AWA on ESPN. And it was the first time ESPN had experimented with wrestling, and I think it was on Monday nights, and it was called Slams and Jams. It was an hour and a half of wrestling and an hour and a half of roller derby. And we broadcast from the Cappetta in Atlantic City. And
I remember those. Let's see, that shows you my age, Gary. I remember those shows.
Well, it was 86.
Yeah, exactly.
And he had an incredible array of talent. If you look back at the time, he had Rick Martel, he had the Road Warriors, he had Kurt Hennig, he had Scott Hall, he had Jimmy Garvin, he had Stan Hansen. And when you think of the fact that he had this national vehicle, the only other one other than McMahon who was doing it by cable, and he couldn't make a dent in what McMahon was doing. And the reason was quite simple, and it became apparent to me in no time, and that is that Vern never had to compete against anyone before.
Right.
He always was Minnesota-based, and he would go out to Denver, some other cities, but he was the only show in town. And he just had of course, he was a great wrestler in the Olympics and in college, but he just, business-wise, he lacked a lot, especially when you talk about a competitive edge. He just didn't have it. And he always thought that what worked in the past would work in the future.
Sure.
And that's all he had to rely on. So, what I say in Body Slams that he showed that he was so fond of the past that he continued to live in it. And that was Vern. He scratched his head when the ratings went down. He couldn't figure out how to spike them. And there's an episode in Body Slams where I recount that he asked me one time, after a show, he said, Gary, what do you think of the product? And whenever I had an answer that I think that, whether it be Bill Watts or Vince McMahon or anyone that if they didn't want the answer, I just would say to them, to give them a chance to back out, I'd say, are you sure you want to know what I think? And he said, yeah. So, I told him a couple positive things. But then I said to him, people have no reason to watch this show.
Right.
There's nothing interesting happening. You're assuming that they just want to see one guy beat another without any scenarios. And maybe there's been a history between these guys, but the vast viewing public, they don't know about it.
Right, exactly.
At that time, Gary, were you doing the ring announcing?
Yes.
Okay. One thing I kind of want to ask you about is, at the indie level, anybody can get in and do the ring announcing. They typically, I've seen them actually pick people out of the crowd to do it for the evening. I've done it myself. But one thing that
and he was picked out of the crowd too, Gary.
Out of the crowd, Gary.
Right.
One thing I've noticed is that after you ring announce a show, and maybe you can elaborate on this or give some insight, all of the workers come up to you and say, how was my match? Mm-hmm. Is that something you experienced over the years? Did they really? Because a lot of people don't really think, to a fan, a ring announcer is just there. He's part of the show. But your involvement is much deeper than that. Is that correct? Is that an accurate statement?
That's an accurate statement. I would think that it would be more common on an independent level because you have young up and coming guys who sincerely if they're interested in their work and they want to do good work, they want the opinion of someone. When I was with the WWF and WCW, more likely than not, it would be a guy that I had developed some kind of a rapport with, or someone that respected me. I remember that happening once. The Nasty Boys had come into WCW, and it was their first match against the Steiner brothers. And it was a little house show down in Alabama. And Knobs came up to me and he asked me that very question. And I said to him, "Are you sure you want to know?"
I'm going to have to keep that response in mind.
And he said, "Yeah." I said, the Steiners have just gotten through with a program of, and I forget who it was. And they wrestle the same match each and every night. You may not realize it, but if you follow what they tell you to do, I mean, these guys are lazy. And they're going to do the same thing every night, and you're not going to catch on that way. And he just looked at me. He didn't say anything. But, so he grew up in the Pennsylvania area, and so he was very familiar with my work for when I was with McMahon, when we were still a territory. So I think that's why he asked that question. But usually, nah. And, Flair never asked me that question. Sting never asked me that. They kind of know what they're doing.
Right. I wouldn't expect a Ric Flair to come out and say, "Hey, how was my match? Did I botch that spot?" It would just be so odd coming from him.
He would more likely say, "Damn that whoever that opponent was. He really messed up. Whatever. Because Flair knows what he's doing."
Sure, absolutely. We've consistently said that he could take a broomstick into the ring and give that a great match.
Make it look good. Now, I read your comments about Dusty Rhodes. And one thing I noticed about the site, on some guys, you don't really get a feel for if you had a bad experience with them or if you had a good experience. Basically, you're just saying, "Hey, this was my experience with the guy. Take it for what you will." But Monday night on Nitro, Jeff Jarrett did the skit with about Dusty Rhodes. I thought was absolutely hilarious. Did you get a chance to catch that?
No, I didn't see it.
Where he came out, I was kind of looking to see if you had actually gotten to catch that and see what your take on that was. But it was actually very, very funny. I thought it was a highlight of the show, actually.
Yeah, very often I'll have a very good personal relationship with someone like Dusty. And yet, I'm not shy about identifying what his faults have been or with the mistakes that he made, how he drove the Crockett organization into the ground and how he put himself over unnecessarily. I consider him to be my friend.
Sure.
But I think he would probably agree with that today. He couldn't see it at the time, but a lot of us did. But as a ring announcer, you kept your mouth shut.
Right.
You didn't go to the boss and say, that really stunk. and that's how you survive for 21 years in that wacky business.
Have you found, though, since you've written the book, has anyone come back and said, Gary, well, why are you writing this stuff about me? Or is pretty much everyone, you're so respected in the business, they go, you know what, that's his opinion and I respect it?
Yeah, I've had no negative feedback of the workers who have written to me or have called me. They like it. That is the way it is. It's about time someone said, the way things really are in that business.
Right.
I haven't had anyone say, "Hey, what the heck did you write that, about?" No, that didn't happen.
Do you find, Gary, with some of the things that were being said about the book and the critical acclaim is out there, and you're saying, you want the book right up next to the Mick Foley and the Rock book. Do you find people taking it more seriously because of the fact that you aren't a wrestler and you were looking at it from a different perspective? Do you think that plays into it at all?
Yeah, the feedback that I get is that my perspective is so different from Mick's or the Rock's or Dallas Page's because I was like a dual role. I was in the middle of it all, but I wasn't involved in it, and my career didn't depend upon a lot of these things that that we talk about in Body Slams. So I was able to be a little bit more objective. I also always kept one foot in the quote-unquote real world.
Right.
I was the kind of guy, more conservative, than a lot of the guys, and they would gravitate toward me to ask me opinions or questions or tell me about what's going on at home, problems that they had. None of that. I mean, if it was a personal thing, I didn't reveal that in the book. I'm not a slime,
Sure.
I had certain limits, and one of my limits was I was not going to reveal anything in the book that would be detrimental to a guy's life today. For instance, if he's happily married today, and if he happened to be fooling around on the road years ago, that's not my business to reveal.
Absolutely.
So I respected that. But, you know, the business, like many other businesses, is filled with jerks. And if he was a jerk, like I said, vicious, I said it.
Exactly. Now, one of the things I want to get into, too, I know that you said this on your website also. You actually worked for Jim Crockett, Vern Gagne, and Vince McMahon all at the same time. How exactly did that work out?
It was a short period of time, but it did happen. When Vince started going national, you remember Crockett and Gagne teamed together to form Pro Wrestling USA.
Right.
And then they started to invade the northeastern territories, so quote unquote. And when they would come to, they didn't want me to work for them to begin with. I kind of like, it was like a little slippery kind of deal. I kind of like slinked in there. They had canceled some of the events because local promoters who knew me from Vince had booked me. I heard that Gary Cappetta was going to be the announcer, and I understood this. They didn't want me to work for them because they wanted to present a clean, brand new product, an alternative.
Okay.
But I was also booked at some shows they weren't aware of, and when I showed up, they liked me. We hit it off. It was Gary Juster was their local promoter. And when they started to do the Meadowlands, they asked me to come in to do the Meadowlands. And, of course, the WWF always worked the Meadowlands, now the Continental Airlines Arena. So the first week of the month, I'd be in there for Pro Wrestling USA. And the third week of the month, I'd be there for Vince. And that went on for a few months until I knew that it wasn't right. It didn't feel right to go in every other week to say, these are the best wrestlers in the world, this is the best promotion. Because if there was one thing that I was going to be able to carry with me wherever I went, it would be the believability that I had developed over the years. And I really began to feel cheap, and I really began to feel transparent. And I just thought, in order to maintain my credibility, I need to choose. And Vern Gagne made it a little bit easier because he invited me to participate in the ESPN show. So that's the way I went. And I knew Vince and I didn't have a great relationship, so I knew there wasn't much of a future there for me.
Right. Now, you worked for both Vince Sr. and Jr., correct?
Mm-hmm.
Describe, I guess, what's the difference between us? What's the difference in working for each of those guys?
Well, at the time that when I started with the WWF, Vinny was just, he was in his late 20s. I was in my early 20s, and there was no doubt that, he was the boss's son. And he was always very arrogant. He always talked down, looked down upon people. And his dad didn't have to do that. His dad was successful. And he always wanted to be a wrestler, and that wasn't going to happen. His dad no way was going to let him enter the ring that way. Of course, it did happen ultimately, but not under Vince Sr.'s reign. Vince Sr. was much more refined. He was a gentleman. Not that he didn't have his own bag of dirty tricks, but he usually had other people carry them out for him. If anyone's familiar with the Bruno Sammartino book, and Bruno gave me permission to use one of his stories, which is how Vince Sr. blacklisted Bruno from the business because he was quote-unquote uncooperative. And so, they play hardball. There's no doubt about it. But Vince Sr. was a very classy guy, very meticulously dressed. And Junior was just very brash. And that was a big difference. They both had well-oiled machines as far as their promotions go. Second to none. So, that's what I would say. But personally, on a personal level, that was the huge difference.
Now, do you get to watch the product nowadays, too? Do you even bother with it now? Or
very rarely.
Very rarely? Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask you now, what have you seen? Have you seen things you just go, well, we've already done that?
I wish I'd see more things that I could say we've done that.
Right.
Because a lot of the things that they're doing, I keep up on it, as far as reading about what's going on.
Sure.
But the kinds of things that they're doing where they're getting away from the art of the game are the kinds of things that I really have a big problem with. Wrestling has always been a big magic show.
Absolutely.
And for me, it was magical. It was a dream come true to be part of it. And you were successful when you were able to convince a crowd, whether it be the live crowd or the home audience, that something was happening, very dangerous kind of thing was happening, but no one was getting hurt.
Right, exactly.
And there's an art to that. And there's no art to, slapping each other in the head with a chair. Or,
I agree.
You know what I mean? I mean, anyone who's foolish enough can do that. And so why would anyone want to pay to see that?
There's, some of my favorite matches I can remember matches that, that actually, like Les Thatcher has shown me that, guys are in headlocks for, 15 minutes, and the crowd is just absolutely riveted, and I'm absolutely riveted.
Where has the reverse chin lock gone?
Right, and until the point where you just go, I can't believe, I'm in love with this match, and I can't believe that I've been watching, these guys just doing mat wrestling for 15 minutes. And it is an art because, to get that crowd in the palm of your hand, and I agree with you. I think, there is too much of the, hey, wink, wink, and a lot of the magic is gone out of the business nowadays.
And I'm not advocating to return to the way things were. I think that you can keep the trappings of today, the excitement and the kinds of things, even the scenarios that are more current. But it doesn't have to be vulgar, and it doesn't have to be blasphemous. It doesn't have to have all of those elements that I wouldn't want my kid to watch.
Sure.
And I don't care how often McMahon says that he does not market his product to kids. Any Saturday or any day of the week, let's go to Toys R Us.
Yes.
and let's see if we can find something wrestling related.
Yeah, actually, that caught my eye the other day at a department store, and it's not so much that there are wrestling action figures, but it's what they're packaging with the figures. And I'm not the big type of coming in and saying, oh, you're not going to sell that to my kids. I think it's a parental responsibility on what they buy for the kids. But at the same time, I sit in that whole thing was McMahon saying, I do not market my product to kids. Well, you got your product right next to G.I. Joe.
That's right.
And you've got this guy looking menacing with a trash can and an axe in this other one or whatever. And just, yes, you do market it to children, but it's a parental responsibility. Don't buy it if you don't want to. But,
yeah, and there's no reason to keep that. You can still keep the product hip and current, and it doesn't have to sink to the levels that it has sunk to. And one of the reasons that I think that I'm most concerned about is that wrestling has always been a cyclical business, and it's going to go down.
Absolutely.
And it is going down a bit now. And in order for it to reemerge, it's got to be healthy when it goes down. Otherwise it's going to take forever to reignite that. And it's usually every 6 years is the cycle.
Right, and I think one thing that comes up, too, is you say back 10 years ago, early 90s when it started hitting this decline, actually late 80s, everybody just kind of thought, well, wrestling's always going to be this hokey little thing where Papa Shango's never going to die and The Undertaker will never go away because you can't kill a character like that. And it's to have that hokey feeling to it. It's like, okay, what are you going to do to revive it? Well, now we saw what they did to revive it. Okay, what's next? I think that's what scares a lot of people who have been around the business for a long time. What's next? How are you going to revive it once it goes down this time?
And it'll be interesting to see what Eric has up his sleeve, as far as that's what he has to come up with. That's the question he has to answer.
Yeah, he has an opportunity to drive that, absolutely. Gary,
do you think he's capable of doing that, though? I mean, we've had, the Bischoff has had the realms before, maybe not as much so as he's going to have now, but it seems that, is he going to be able to wash away that Russo, that all the damage that Vince Russo basically did to WCW?
I think one thing that Eric has in his favor is that he's not afraid of McMahon, and he's not intimidated easily. And I think that he's willing to do different things. I think that, it also depends on who gets into his ear, but he's a pretty independent guy, and he's a master salesman, especially of himself, but he can sell just about anything. And I think that if he goes back to some of the basics, keeps the glitz, keeps an interesting storyline, keeps it logical, if the characters are there and they continue and the people can understand what's going on and can get into it, and maybe he can bring back some wholesome kind of family kind of entertainment.
One thing that's been discussed lately too, Gary, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, is, do we think that wrestling fans, the casual Joe wrestling fan, is too smart? You know, kayfabe is pretty much a thing of the distant past with the internet. People, you know, the books that are out, Mick Foley's book, The Rock has books, China has a book, you have a book, Diamond Dallas Page has a book, and you're going behind the scenes. Do you think that in addition to that, in addition to the internet and everything that's available for the average wrestling fan to see, oh, hey, you know, we know, you know, the average wrestling fan comes up and goes, hey, is that a work or a shoot?
Mm-hmm.
You know, 10 years ago, everything that was on TV was a shoot. It didn't matter who you talked to. It was a shoot, and they would convince you that it was a shoot. Do you think that has played into part of this kind of decline? Has the wrestling fan become too smart for the business?
Well, you know, I think that the smart fans, quote-unquote smart fans, aren't as smart. I'm sorry.
Not as smart as they think.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of those things that were portrayed as being shoots, they weren't. They were manufactured.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what? It amazes me that when people ask me about the Sid Arn incident in Germany, how many people believe that never really happened? It was all made up. And there's one case where, yeah, I mean, they really did get into that knife fight. But it's all a con. I mean, people are conned into believing that they're marks, so that they feel closer to the business, and there's more of an allegiance. That's another marketing tactic, and that's all it is.
Right. It's kind of interesting too. Guys like Harley Race, who you have on your website as well, and in the book. Somebody like that who did the Secrets of Pro Wrestling Revealed and was blasted by every internet site out there, when in reality he was really doing nothing more than what those internet sites are doing.
Yeah,
and it's kind of interesting how that goes.
I have something new on my bodyslams.com website. So I have two guys that are now writing regular columns every week. One of the guys is taking on wrestling journalists, and it's pretty interesting to see what he comes up with. And say, you know, you guys think you're so smart, but you know, you always jump on the bandwagons, and he gives you actual examples of how these guys have changed their stories, just like McMahon changes his stories with each interview.
Right. Well, it's very true, because actually you see then a lot of the, you know, I mean, it's no big secret, you know, that WCW picks up Bob Ryder, and it just seems that Bob Ryder then becomes a solely, you know, himself becomes a big WCW fan at that point, and I would say definitely that there's being, you know, there's a lot of payoffs going into these guys, or a lot of, you know, these guys are actually employed by the corporations right now.
Well, you know, 10 years ago, here's something that just to show you how much of a mark I remained for most of my career. It was Ric Flair's 40th birthday, and we were in Chicago, and there's now at the time, Meltzer was writing just scathing reports about WCW, and you know, Jim Herd and Ric Flair were at each other's throats. And so anyway, I'm invited to this birthday party. It's at the top floor of this party room of the hotel we were staying at, and I walk in, and the first three people I see who are there at the party are Jim Herd, obviously Ric Flair, it's his birthday, and Dave Meltzer. And I'm saying, you know, they're all having a good time. And I'm saying to myself, this doesn't add up. I read Meltzer's sheet, and I thought they don't like each other. I know that Flair and, you know, Meltzer always have had a relationship, but Jim Herd, who was the head of WCW at the time, but, you know, so you can't believe, you just can't believe just about anything. You just have to use your good common sense and enjoy wrestling. You know, like, stop examining every little thing is what I would say to, you know, the viewer out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's so many different levels of appreciation for the form of entertainment. Just enjoy it. Get into it. Have a good time.
Sometimes it's a little tough to let yourself be entertained when you see something, but for the most part, yeah, just lay back and, you know, let yourself be entertained.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to be about.
I agree with you. 100%, Gary. I mean, there's so many times that I can still now, you know, get into it and watch a match and just go, all right, you know, I was fully enthralled. They're telling me a story inside of this ring, and that is the magic that I miss almost, you know, on a weekly basis, because there's a lot of times where, you know, they'll give you that little wink, hey, this is all just a work kind of thing, and just throws me out, you know, totally throws me out of the program.
You know, I really don't see how it enhances someone's enjoyment of the product if they know that for a specific match where a wrestler is in who's wanted by the law, that I'm supposed to stand there and look to see if the cops are there, or see who's going to be served with subpoenas. It happened many times.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if I saw someone, I'd tell the wrestler, and he'd be out of there. Did you get that? But that doesn't help for the person that's sitting out there. We would very often we judge our success by the dad and the kid who would make their way to the second row with their popcorn and their soda, and dad has his beer, and I can hear dad saying to him, "Now this is all fake, Brad. That don't believe anything you see and whatever." And we get into the second match and the third match, and then Flair comes out for his match, and by the end of Flair's match, his dad is on his chair screaming.
Exactly.
You've succeeded. Then if you can just capture that guy for like the 30 seconds, a minute 30 seconds, and get him into it, then you've done your job.
And that guy and the blue hair ladies, where have all the blue hair old ladies gone too?
They're wrestling.
Purse swinging grannies are gone from the house.
I miss them. I miss going down to Cincinnati Gardens. I used to go there all the time and watch NWA. And I miss those people in the front row. I mean, it's just they're not as rabid anymore.
Cincinnati was a very, very hot city.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I never missed a card at the Gardens.
Georgia used to work everywhere in Georgia, pretty much, and then Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and they might go to Columbus while they're in Cincinnati, but even I have a tape from 1980 and 81 of Georgia Championship Wrestling, and they're talking Columbus and Cincinnati, and then Macon, Georgia. But they didn't mention anything in between, but Cincinnati and Columbus.
Yeah, I mean that was a classic building, Cincinnati Gardens. It was a tough building in the sense that when you see that the baby faces are housed on one side and the heels are on the other side, they really are separate.
Yeah.
And there's no way to get to each other. In the large arenas, those hallways just keep on going round and round, and the guys can talk, do whatever they need to do, and business-wise. But once they get to that arena and they're on opposite sides, they don't have communication with each other.
Right.
And that made for a lot. The matches were better.
I agree.
The guys couldn't